Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Well, thanks for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Great to have you with us, and a special guest for Next Up. Halfway through this hour, we'll talk to Dr. Art McCoy, the retiring superintendent from the Jennings School District, who's going to take on the task of creating a larger workforce in the greater St. Louis area at the behest of the Regional Business Council. So Dr. McCoy in about 30 minutes. But first, let's meet the panelists who are about to discuss the hot topics this week in the St. Louis area, starting with the news director for the Big 550 KTRS and the co-host of the Jennifer and Wendy Show, Wendy Wiese, along with Mr. Joe Holleman, sitting in for the vacationing Bill McClellan. Joe, of course, the great columnist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And we welcome Ray Hartmann, one of our founders, who writes for rawstory.com, the Riverfront Times, and he hosts his own show weeknights on KTRS. And we've got Alvin Reid with us from the St. Louis American and more. And we'll just kick things off, Ray. You did not get in a fight with that bear in your neighborhood, but like so many others, you got tangled in the dog leash and took one for the team, huh?
No, the bear got in a left hook. I got in a right uppercut, and he ran up the tree. My story.
Well, that's a good story. I like that one. Hey, Joe, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. And we want to ask you about two major developments in Jefferson City this week, both involving Governor Parson. Number one, Governor Parson did decide earlier this week that he's going to nix the federal unemployment benefits that people have been enjoying when they've been out of work here in Missouri. Basically, you get $300, $320 if you're unemployed, thanks to Missouri. But Washington has been adding another $300 because businesses say they can't find workers. The governor has said that federal match will end June the 12th. That's one development. And another that came out today was that even though voters in Missouri last August voted to expand Medicaid for 275,000 Missourians starting July the 1st, the governor announced today that he won't fund it. So take it away, your opinions on both of these developments, Joe.
I personally don't like it when there's been a vote and then politicians ignore it. And I don't care what side it comes on. It didn't matter whether you're for or against Medicaid expansion. If you ostensibly want to take the position that you're for democracy, there was a vote. There was a result of the votes. And I think you have to honor that. That said, I think it's clear that Parsons said, okay, I will fund it begrudgingly, and then said, oh, wait, look, the legislature didn't give me any money for it, and now it's going to go to court. So, but I don't like when we have a referendum when we're asked to go to a poll to decide something.
Okay.
We decided the legislature doesn't like it, so they don't do it.
And with regards to the federal unemployment benefits that Missourians will not get starting June the 12th?
That I'm in favor. I'm in favor of Parsons' move, and I honestly think it's common sense when people can talk about whatever the level of unemployment rate is. But if you do the math, I can see where a lot of people say, you know, it's better for me to go out and get a job than try to get by on $15,000 a year, roughly. I can't get by on $15,000 a year. However, when you're making $31,000 a year, maybe you don't go back to work. And I think at some point in time, if everybody was thinking that, well, this is just going to go on forever, hate to say it or pleased to say it, the pandemic ends and eventually life has to get back to normal. And paying people $30,000 to $31,000 to stay home is not good for people who run businesses. It's just not.
But now there is a push, at least I've seen many, many posts or tweets on Twitter about how this has nothing to do with the unemployment funds being distributed to the states. This is all about redefining the workplace and how people are mad as heck and they're not going to take it anymore. I'm with you, Joe. I think that it's gotten pretty easy. Certainly there are some people for whom this is necessary. And sadly, I think they're going to fall through the cracks.
Well, one thing that's coming out of this is like McDonald's is raising their wage. Another major fast food or restaurant is doing the same thing. Part of it is you don't pay enough money, so thus people can do that math, okay? And they said, like, yeah, it is easier. Two, Republicans are reading this room wrong. They are still passing that thing off that the only people that don't want to work are lazy people in the city who, most of them, might be black people, okay? And I guarantee you, they're hearing right now from people in rural Missouri saying, what the heck are you doing? Okay, they got this, kind of like, I don't know, just narrow scope of who's too lazy to go back to work. And this is throughout this state and all states. And primarily, most of these dollars are going to people who used to work someplace that didn't go back. And most of those people in the state of Missouri are white. And I think that there will be a backlash over this that they did not expect. Now, right. It is true that a lot of businesses, what I used to go to, Malone's, they couldn't find people to work. I don't understand it, but that's a reality. And if this is playing some role in it, then maybe that can be identified. But just on June 12th, it's over. I think that kind of attitude comes from you don't know exactly who it is that's not going back to work.
Well, and keep in mind, this is only, eventually the money's going to stop coming federally. It's just interesting now in the red states, it's going to end now because they want to make a political statement. Alvin's very much on the mark here. And frankly, both this and the Medicare, it's the same sort of, the Republicans are still running against sort of a 60s trope of ignoring even the welfare reform of the 90s under Clinton, that this is all, urban people, which it isn't. And with Medicaid, it's the same thing. Joe's right about the public will thing, but the only reason the Republicans are making their little stand on Medicaid expansion, which has got to be the stupidest self-defeating thing ever, given over $1 billion that we paid into the federal government, is because of this trope. And it's all politics. And keep in mind, all these businesses got their PPV, they got all their money. And so this idea that it's like exclusively going to people,
if you can't get people to work, Ray, if you can't get people to work, all the PPP in the world isn't going to help you.
Pay a decent wage and they'll come to work. It's the issue.
If you're trying to propose that the Republicans are the only people dealing in outdated tropes, what are the Democrats doing? And it's all politics. What do politicians do? The idea that Democrats are on one side not paying any attention to tropes or not trying to win the vote, and only Republicans are doing that, that's illogical. And and I know that's not how it works.
Well, I would say this. The facts are we have 8.1 million job openings in this country, but last Friday it was announced that there were just 266,000 new hires. And you talk to any business person in this area and you'll say they can't find workers. Well, how can people be out of work when all these businesses need workers? And I agree.
I think about, Charlie?
I think the governor's going a little. Pardon me? Every business. I ran into a person the other. Every business, whether it's Banner Construction or whether it's Archer's Daniel Midland or whether it's the hospital, the schools, people are not able to hire. Everybody's hiring right now. Even broadcasting, KMWorks has an opening.
I know people who are looking for work that tell me that's not true, but
it flies in the face of logic to think that saying that to stay home will earn you $15,000, and that if you say, "Oh, staying home will earn you $30,000," that more people won't stay home. Of course they will. Of course they will.
Well, what about all the other states that are not? What about the states that are not being run by Donald Trump
and
that
those
aren't
are
doing
blue states, Ray, playing to their crowd based on tropes from the 1960s. Welcome to politics.
Okay,
you said the red states did it first.
Let's
because
move
the blue
on.
states
Alvin,
are saying no.
Thank you, Joe Holleman in the interest of time, we'll move on. And thank you very much for your thoughts there. Robert Fernandez, homeless guy, wins in federal court, Alvin, represented by attorney Biba Shock. Fernandez had panhandled at the corner of 55 and Lindbergh, I think, for years, right? Is that the location there, Joe?
Yes.
And he was arrested numerous times. He was cited numerous times. And he basically said, look, I've got to get this permit to panhandle. It's only good for 6 months. It cost me $13. And he was doing this, but other people like those collecting signatures or petitions or those who were protesting didn't have to do the same thing. So he sued, and Judge Stephen Limbaugh said, you're right. The county, which had been citing you and arresting you, is abridging your First Amendment rights. My only concern is does that mean that we're going to have a lot of panhandlers at intersections? I'm not too crazy about that. What are your thoughts, Alvin?
Well, I don't think this will increase the panhandling quotient, because there just only so many people even want to do that or want to be there. But of course, our state thinks they aren't working because, unemployment benefits. But you can't, if a firefighter can be out there with his boot, collecting money, and he's not a safety hazard, then a guy, shaking his empty Hardee's cup is not a violation either. You can't make laws that specify who can stand on the median and collect money from people and who can't. That just doesn't make any sense. So I think that's what the judge, was saying. I mean, the law is what the law is. Now, where it goes from here, Judge Limbaugh is not responsible for. That's the beauty of being a judge. I guess, but no, I definitely get this, and I understand it.
A lot of people made the point that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Wendy.
A lot of people making the point that if you just stop, if you stop responding to the panhandler, they will pull up stakes and move elsewhere. That doesn't seem exactly merciful. I think the fireman with the boot argument, though, is what put this over the top.
I also think that the judge made a point about safety. I have passed this gentleman. I've used that exit 2 dozen, 3 dozen times. He's not a safety hazard. And as people who work corners, he knows when the light turns green and traffic starts to move, he hops up on the sidewalk area. He's never been a problem as far as safety. Now, if you have someone out there who's cutting in between cars while traffic's moving,
and we've all seen that. We've all seen that.
Right, and we have.
Yeah.
But this is a guy who has figured out how to work this corner, and he's doing it. And I guess his very existence on that corner has bothered somebody enough. I've seen him, 30 times. Doesn't bother me. A time or two, I think I may have dropped something in the cup. Other times I leave the window open or window closed. He doesn't knock on it. I mean, he's no problem whatsoever that I've ever seen.
I don't know, Joe. I think it's a little dangerous when you have people bopping in and around intersections. But it is interesting. I think that, among other things, the county admitted that it's no longer going to be able to arrest people because of the definitions of being a vagrant in St. Louis County, which included gambling. And of course, that must have been written way before slot machines and lotteries became legal. But truth be told, there are some activities that the county was prohibiting, without permission, including getting a ride or hitchhiking or collecting for a charity or panhandling. But the county seemed to say it was okay to protest in the street. They didn't abridge that, the right to protest or collect signatures or to register voters. And I think that's where
evangelize.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I say be careful out there, everybody. As we move on to you, Wendy, the Attorney General for the state of Missouri, Eric Schmidt, is among other leaders across the country who sent a letter to Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, said, we don't want Instagram for kids under 13. Facebook has these plans to have a youth version of Instagram. And how do you feel about this as the mother of two?
Well, mine are 30, so they're well past Instagram for kids, as you know, Charlie. But I'm very uncomfortable with another platform when Facebook has had a history of issues, whether privacy issues or security issues. I don't feel that they would be able to protect children enough from the predatory aspects of Facebook and the adults who take advantage of them.
I don't think you can. Well, first of all, I'm kind of tired of Eric Schmidt weighing in on everything that isn't his job and worrying about that it has nothing to do with the state of Missouri. But of course, when he does in Missouri, like he did with the lawsuit this week on the county, the county COVID regulations, he makes a fool out of himself. But on this thing, I think you've got to, as a parent of a couple of teenagers, you got to trust your kids. And I don't think it's from a First Amendment standpoint, the government can be making this call. I don't think it's I think it's mostly like everything else Eric does now is grandstanding. He's running for Senate, and it's just tiring that all he does is file amicus briefs and is making big statements. Do your job, Missouri.
I agree, but I also say, like, I'm always worried when you say someone can't do something because I don't like you. Zuckerberg, evil. Facebook, even though Zuckerberg didn't make Facebook evil, people did, but it's his fault. I probably have no use for the man. Never met him, probably never will. But I just wary of saying, oh, you can't do this. Let the parents decide who's online and who's not, and what they watch and what they don't watch. I mean, it is still possible for that to happen in most American households.
Well, my concern about Facebook, just having read Facebook, The Inside Story by Stephen Levy, the whole operation uses the latest in neurology and algorithms to suck you in so that your eyeballs are fixed onto their operation. And if he's going to do that with kids under 13, I am really afraid.
First of all, Charlie, they've been doing that on TV since they invented TV. Now, and if you don't want to fall victim to it, don't turn your TV on. All right? It's a little more sophisticated than that, than television. In fact, it's a lot more sophisticated. Facebook, social media are designed to keep your eyeballs on, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, and the like. Okay, so why don't I have a problem with that? Because I'm not using them.
Well, you are a 61-year-old male.
But so what? But your children, I think if anything we've learned in this age of social media and everything else, the children are not as easily watched, Alvin, as they once were. They have the phone, they have the screens, they have the desktops, the laptops, the iPads. It's not as easy as it used to be when we all had one television in the family room.
All right, take the modem with you to work. Ain't nobody signing on, right?
It sounds like Alvin is calling for parental responsibility, and I back him 100%.
I do too.
Because the bottom line is the mobility that people have, not just kids, but including kids, the mobility and the choices and the freedom that is provided, sometimes to a fault, by the internet. It's changed the world. But one of the things is, I'm with Alvin 100%. Teach your children well and hope for the best and hope they make good judgments, because you are not going to cloister them. You are not going to put them in a
when they don't make good decisions because the parents aren't paying attention, they'll become our problem on the other end, right?
Okay,
you cannot put them in a bubble.
Okay. The only thing I'm concerned about, guys, is the track record of this company, because when it comes to privacy and fake news and Russian intervention and more, Zuckerberg turned a blind eye. And he's been doing that since he was in his dormitory at Harvard when he started this.
You can't pass a law because of one company, Charlie.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to pass a law because, like I said, because you don't like Facebook. I mean, I get it, but...
Are you going to ban Disney from having things under 30?
We did it with Big Tobacco. We did it with Ma Bell.
Maybe one at a time. I didn't hear you, Joe.
I think we're reaching, as you listen to our discussion right here, we are now lumping social media in with radio and television. So the argument that some years ago that said this shouldn't be regulated by the FCC, it should be free, I think that's what might change in an overall is that these platforms end up getting regulated, such as radio and television has. There are certain codes that radio and television, although they have loosened over the years, are still supposed to follow. The 7 words you can't say, for a lack of a better way to put it. And so now I think when you talk about all these social media platforms, which in many ways have replaced radio and television for a younger generation, that maybe it is time to look at some sort of legislation that controls what sort of content is there. But overall, to give another social media platform that is specifically for preteens, that has a creepy factor just out the roof.
But what if Disney does it?
But let's move on. Joe, I want to ask you
Disney
about Mayor Tashara.
No, what if Disney does it? How do you say Facebook can't, but Disney can? I mean, what is
is Disney trying to do it?
Well, if they wanted to, nobody would be saying, "Oh, you can't have a platform for kids."
Well, I don't think anybody can say that Zuckerberg can't do this. We're saying, should someone be able to tell Zuckerberg to do it?
And certainly not the state attorneys general. I mean, people.
Okay.
Who else, Ray?
We're back to Eric Schmidt again.
Well, that's where we started.
Okay, let's move on, guys. Thank you so much, Joe Holleman, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, story this week pointing out that the mayor, Tashara Jones, did something I don't recall seeing. She vetoed 2 developments, one on Locust, the other, one that we talked about actually when Dr. Fred Pistello was with us, the renovation of the old Jesuit Hall at the corner of Grand and Lindell. And she vetoed them because the developers are getting benefits that are too generous in terms of tax breaks. One of them had a 95% tax abatement. 95%. So she said, hey, let's go to the table and we'll negotiate. I think that's a good move because I think we've been giving away the candy store for too darn long. How about you?
I agree with you. I agree with you that it's a good first step. I don't see it I see it as the first step to an accomplishment. I don't see it as an accomplishment in and of itself. I think that way too many times the free market gets ignored. And businesses, either through TIFs or tax abatements, get breaks that they don't necessarily need. Look at all the communities in this nation that have built football stadiums and baseball parks for very rich people that probably would have done it anyway. But if you're a decent businessman or businesswoman, you're going to ask for a break. I would. We all would. But then you say no. I think you can afford it. What I don't see is people that on the other hand, the follow-up was this will get development in other areas of the city. I'm not sure that we can assume that because you turned this one down that it'll automatically benefit somewhere else, because then what you're talking about is giving tax breaks for there. Then you have the same situation. But as far as not giving tax breaks to big, rich corporations, I am 100% behind that.
Charlie, I agree with Joe about the last thing he just said. And the one thing is where it is in the city or in any single county, whatever, matters. In other words, this comes out of the concept, the whole TIFs and all the tax breaks have been dramatically abused. The original concept, which actually came out of Europe, called enterprise zones, the idea was to incentivize businesses to go places they would not go in the free market. Joe's absolutely right about it. The idea was if an area is so blighted and so run down in the city, county, wherever, rural areas, then you've got to you want to bring them back. You don't want to lose the housing stock, yada, yada. You incentivize people to go where they wouldn't go. And that nothing about the St. Louis Cardinals rings true.
What about Grand Center, Lindell and Grand,
exactly.
right around the corner from our broadcast studio?
There was a time that Grand Center probably fit that category. It doesn't fit it as much now.
Okay.
But the point is that when Grand Center first started, it most certainly fit that. And so the question is, I just had a guest on. I said Hyde Park is a great example where we ought to be incentivized. It's a wonderful area. It's just like architecture.
Ray, Alvin.
We should incentivize it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Alvin?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were jumping in. Never mind.
No. I was saying, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm done.
Okay, he's done. Okay, let's move on then to bears. Ray, you had a tussle with one this past week in your neighborhood. And now, I don't know if most folks know this, but there's going to be a bear hunting season in Missouri for the first time in quite some time, starting in October, because the bear population has increased. Are you in favor of culling the herd? Or do bears travel in herds? Maybe not, but are you in favor of the bear hunting season in St. Louis starting in mid-October?
In St. Louis?
Missouri, excuse me. It might be your neighborhood, depending on last.
No, I'm just not. But I've never had. No, I'm against killing bears. I'm sorry. I think that I'm against it.
I agree. I'm totally against it. I think just because something's like, oh, they're no longer endangered, so let's hunt them back into endangered species again. That really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And now this bear who showed up in Kirkwood, and I guess the rent was too high, so he went to Richmond Heights, which is an enterprise. It's an enterprise zone for bears. So now that proves let's just hunt them down because they're a nuisance now. I'm not down with the hunting of the black bears anywhere in the state of Missouri.
I think there's nothing better than have 5 city suburban folks get together and talk about wildlife. It's fabulous. But, they came off the endangered list. Let's for a minute give the Department of Conservation, which has run hunts on a variety of animals for decades upon decades, that they monitor these things. And one of the reasons you have them is that they don't get hunted back to extinction. So what we have is they're saying there is a problem with an overabundance of them. So indeed, to harvest whatever word, kill bears, whatever you want to say, is, I'm willing to say as the Department of Conservation is doing their studies, I haven't noticed the deer population nearing extinction in St. Louis or Missouri. And I have full faith that they will monitor the bear hunt enough to make sure that they don't disappear.
30 seconds, Wendy.
The deer in our area actually have like a dining room table in our backyard. So they're very, very comfortable. That said, I am not comfortable. It's the teddy bear that has made our, this such an aversion. I couldn't bring myself to hunt a black bear. But if one was, walking up my driveway, I'd put a for sale sign out in front of the house.
Thank you, Wendy. Folks, that concludes the first half. On our second half, next up, we'll talk to Dr. Art McCoy about his next assignment to increase jobs in the greater St. Louis area. That's on Next Up. Don't go away.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Design Air Heating and Cooling was founded over a century ago in St. Louis and is still operated by the same family today. Design Air provides HVAC services for homes and businesses and is proud to support Donnybrook.
The Little Bit Foundation is removing barriers to student success in our city's most under-resourced schools by providing access to essential items like hygiene and school supplies, clothing, and more. In 2019, the organization implemented the What's Next program in Riverview Gardens High School. The program assists with post-graduation preparation through career exploration workshops, job fairs, and mentorship.
It's our job to essentially partner up and figure out how can we help you be what you want to be? How can we help you be great? It's a resource desert out there. It's a food desert out there. Of course, Riverview High School, but we want to get out there and give these students every opportunity they can to be something more than what they already are. But we're not here to tell them this is what you're going to be. Our job is to say, okay, this is what you're going to be. Let's try to create that path of resources to support you to get to where you want to be in your life.
Research shows the significant long-term benefits of early childhood education. However, education for our region's earliest learners, children from birth to age 5, has had long-standing issues of inequities.
0 to 5 is when 90% of the children's brain develops, so that's where the investment really needs to be, especially in St. Louis, the zip code you live in. Your choices are limited.
Living St. Louis, an early education special, Monday night at 7 p.m. on 9PBS.
Thanks for watching 9 PBS in St. Louis.
Well, thank you for joining us for the second half, which we call Next Up, where we talk to area leaders. And this week, we're so proud to welcome Dr. Art McCoy. You know him from education circles. He's been the superintendent of the Jennings School District. Well, he's retiring, but hardly retiring, in fact, because he's going to become the new workforce development leader for the Regional Business Council. Dr. McCoy, thank you very much for joining us on Next Up.
It's a pleasure to be with each of you.
Pleasure's ours. Tell our viewers what your new role will be all about.
Well, that's easy. So you see a star behind me. We're working on promoting and showcasing our stars and creating more stars. That's an acronym for me for supporting pre-K through 20, the 20th grade, to make sure that we ultimately have a pipeline where we have 1,000 new employees in 4 sectors: technology, advanced manufacturing, as well as the trades and healthcare. Secondly, we want to transform what education is like in that pre-K through 20 area. And we want to touch people who are not in formal education, in training programs, micro-credentialing programs. We want to help people access the data and access opportunities. That's the A for our stars. And we're reconstructing what mentorship looks like, as well as what recruitment looks like, by having the corporations, the over 100 corporations of the RBC, commit to individuals for 2 years, 4 years to the completion of their associate's degree or their bachelor's degree or a career pathway job that gives you a living wage. And then the last S is to really show you. We don't want to just talk about it. We're not a think tank, we're a do tank, and we will show you our stars that are here in St. Louis.
Ray?
Dr. McCoy, a lot of people in public education feel that public education itself is under attack in capitals such as Jefferson City, in the name of charter schools, in the name of vouchers, private school funding. What is your sense of that?
I'm a pro-excellence superintendent, and so I tell people I'm not pro-choice, I'm pro-excellence, which means I believe the systems are created for the students. So if the system is excellent, the students should get access to it. That's from homeschooling, parochial schooling, vouchers, for opportunities. If you're stuck in an environment where the system is underperforming, no child should be forced to stay in a system that's been unaccredited or provisionally for 15 years, 20 years or more. So I'm, of course, for public schools because I'm a public school superintendent, and I know charter schools are also public schools. So I'm pro-excellence, and I'm against anything that's not excellent or that's failing. And so I do know that the COVID pandemic has created an opportunity to show the weaknesses and the lack of customer service in the quote-unquote public schools, because many of school districts did not get back into service, whereas private schools were in school the entire time. Now, I can't say that's the case for my system. We got back to school before even the parochial schools. We piloted in April. We had everyone back in July, and all students 70% were back by August for the regular school year, and the rest were virtual. So we were the exception to the rule, but I believe that it exposed the weakness, an area for improvement, and I believe this next school year you'll see a difference where everybody's back and trying to do their best.
Dr. McCoy, one of the things I hear, and it irritates me, I'll be quite simple about it, is in discussions about, future for Black young people, Black kids, it's just like, oh, you got to get the Black kids into the trades. You got to get the Black kids into the trades. And I've thought like, well, how about we get Black kids into college? And, it's like, well, they can't do that. And I'm wary of setting the goal not as high as it could be. So what are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I love what you're saying. It's a both and it's not an either or. So I'm an educator, and I tell people college is a means to an end. Education is a means to an end towards a living wage and a career and a life full of happiness and productivity. So don't get confused with the means for the end. So what we're doing is saying we want to have multiple on-ramps and multiple off-ramps. The programs we're creating gets a kid in the door without a college degree, but with a certificate. But then it requires that the corporations continue to invest using their tuition reimbursement for the completion of a 4-year degree and sometimes a master's degree. So they're not stopping with this job. They're getting on a career ladder. And that ladder then gives you the happiness, the power to actually have happiness and the pursuit of happiness and liberty that we want. So it's a both and. Now, some people in many of the jobs will not require a degree. Over 50% in technology won't require a bachelor's degree. So what we want to do is get people to the right opportunities that give them the skills, the post-secondary skills that gets them on a pathway. So my secret sauce is I pushed this into the junior year of high school, where I literally had my high schools go on an 8-block schedule, 4-period schedule. Kids got the 24 required credits by the time they were done with their junior year. And so because if you take 8 classes a year and it's only 24 credits, that's 6 a year. Well, we did 8 a year, so they can get 32 credits. They had a whole year that allowed them to get work experience and college credit experiences. So every one of our kids could get 60 college credit hours at no cost due to the taxpayer dollars, or a year worth of insight and job experience, making $20 or more an hour. And that's just the start. It's not the finish. So I agree. We need to look at higher education and get people on career ladders that then have industries support the continuation of the degree. That will also eliminate college debt. The debt is in the trillions, as we know, multiple trillions. And if you get the job pathway first and then have a focus for your career, you won't be a degree changer. And that's the goal, to be smarter, to go smart and create stars.
We all stand in awe of educators who even, way before the pandemic, were challenged in so many ways in the classrooms, having to be everything for so many children today. And not the least of which, in terms of some of those challenges, is just the available bandwidth, internet access, and that kind of thing. Missouri has actually committed to expanding the bandwidth and to make it more accessible for kids all over the state. How important is that, Dr. McCoy? And are you happy with any progress that you have seen to this point?
Let me give you a little bit of insider talk. I'm never satisfied, but I am pleased with what we did regionally, but not in the state. So there are still about 20% of our rural families that don't have internet access. One of the first things I did was I reached out to Sam Page. I texted him. I said, we need $4 million as a school district. I said this in March and April, and he jumped on it real quickly. It was political season, so he was very responsive. And he said, hey, I'll give you $4 million, but who else can you share it with? He held a meeting in our gym, and he initiated the library broadband situation with hotspots for every one of our kids, as well as Chromebooks, not just for our kids, but for Normandy, Riverview, and even I asked him to help out Kevin Carl's district, Hancock Place, and others in South County, St. Louis. And it happened. It was not that fast in the rural areas. They, to this day, don't have broadband connection. So there were 7 C's that we focused on as I wrote the paper for how to school successfully during COVID. One was connectivity through hotspots. The second was computers. Everybody should have Chromebooks 1-to-1. The third were life coaches to deal with mental health, trauma, and anxiety. As you point out, Wendy, we were focusing on these epidemics before this pandemic of mental health crises, where 7 out of 10 youth had mental health trauma. And during the pandemic, more like 9 out of 10. So those are the first 3 C's. We needed champions for certain policies and procedures, as Ray pointed out, to make education more equitable. And then, of course, we needed courage, and we became contact tracers. I had 1/4 of my staff become certified contact tracers. And then lastly, we had to make a commitment to real-time communication and facts because things were changing so much. Those were the 7 C's that had us be successful during COVID. I'm on the governor's task force for the reentry of school. I shared it with the state. We got it to MSBA to publish and publicate it to all the school board members and so forth. So I totally agree with you. We have our work cut out to make sure across the state you have broadband connectivity as well as computers, one-to-one Chromebooks, and more. And so I want to just say this is two sides of one coin. Alvin's question and statement about Black children being marginalized towards only the jobs of trades is real, and that's marginalization. We don't want jobs, we want business owners, and we want career pathways for life. On the flip side, we can't ignore rural places that have no connectivity, no businesses around them that will give them apprenticeships and internships like we have, 300 here. And so we really want to connect the dot and bridge those needs to meet the need at the speed of the need across the state. And I've been talking with the State Workforce Development Department, Dr. Marty Leathers, and even the governor working towards that goal.
I have a question that sort of dovetails off of Alvin's that had to do with trades. And certainly the marginalization is not a good idea. But was there a period in time in education, let's say 10, 15 years ago, where nobody was being told to go into trades and you must go to college and you must build up this debt, which became one of the offshoots of it? And so when I talk to people I know who are plumbers, electricians, they're like, there aren't any around, Joe. So I would hate to see it marginalized, but was there a time when success in education meant going to college and these jobs that are important and well-paying and can allow people to build up money to start their, you can own a plumbing company, but it helps to be a plumber first. Do you think there's at least a recognition that the trades are not some embarrassing profession to get into?
Oh, yes, by all means. All right, so you make a valid point. I'm on the board of the construction forum, and we've been working on rebranding the names of it so that people won't have the old stigma of the trade schools. If you recall, back in the 70s and 80s, there were trade schools, Northwest and so forth, and that left the stigma of, okay, you're just going to be a plumber. Well, the fact is, plumbers and carpenters get paid more than entry-level teachers, social workers, and even attorneys in many cases. And so what we have forced is the teaching of micro enterprises and small business ownership so that the youth does not stop with the job as a plumber, but that they become a business owner, that they don't stop with the job as a carpenter, but that they get the skills to have an MBA eventually, or to manage a business and manage people and have leadership skills. This is what I've coined as power skills. And so ultimately, when we talk about the career pathway, you want to teach people how to get a job, how to keep a job, how to get a promotion, and then how to own the job, how to multiply it and be a multiplier factor for your family, your street, your block, your community. And so really, that is what we're teaching, the notions of a career ladder and power skills. Now, let's not get it twisted or confused. There are a lot of people who know that are really, to be frank, white, male, and have family members who are plumbers and contractors and owners of their own small businesses. And then they teach their young children, hey, take this job. It's not the start, it's not the finish, it's the starting place. And then you're going to take over my business as a contractor, finishing people's basements and so forth. That's what we're trying to teach people that are in marginalized communities about the ownership and the voice that you have and the power that you have to get a skill and then make it durable to anything that you're going to. Even if you don't stay a carpenter, you can become an advanced manufacturer, then work for Boeing, and then ultimately have that durable skill of leadership, of self-initiative, of really pushing through life skill and textbook skills. So it's a both and. We have to remarket the terms because most people don't think of all that when they hear the word trades. That's the issue.
Right.
Dr. McCoy, your new assignment is with the Regional Business Council, a group of medium-sized businesses in the greater St. Louis area. What do they tell you about their need for workers? Do they need workers?
It's a great question. So for the past 7 years, I've been a superintendent of school districts of Jennings. We never had a list of what the need was that was fresh from industry. And I was on national committees trying to work on, well, what does industry need? And the speed of the need always went so fast that there was no documented list until I started working directly with industries. And that's what made them fall in love with me, and I fell in love with them. And we have lists that have been crafted of power skills, which I call it power skills and not soft skills, because if you're from a middle class or upward family, then it's soft to you to be able to have $50,000 or $60,000 or more a year, to show up on time, to be well dressed, to be well spoken. That's something that's easy because you see it, you do it, you know it. But if you're not in an environment that's typical, then that's a power skill. You're teaching people to do this because it gives you power, it gives you respect, and it ultimately helps others to see that you want to be on the track for more power. So yes, is the answer to your question. We've learned specifically what power skills are needed, what domains they fall in, from the internal domains of mindset, of having confidence, of having the ability to smile even when things aren't so happy. Because it's about the customer and making sure they're having a good experience with the product. And then sometimes the less internal aspects and more so the external, like showing up on time, being well dressed, being well spoken, being well traveled, being well versed, understanding multiple cultures, going down the list and understanding how to be a female thriving leader in a mostly male dominated business industry, let's say like advanced manufacturing or like banking, for instance, how to persevere, what the unwritten rules, the hidden rules are, and what we need to change. So I've very craftily coined this, not DEI, but DIE, diversity, inclusion, and equity, because we die as a company, we die as a country, we die as communities if we don't do it right. And so what am I promoting? I'm promoting LIFE, which is a leadership institute for the future and focus on equity and engagement. And so in my roles, I do have the role of RBC champion of STL.works, but I also have the role of being a distinguished fellow for St. Louis University, their first distinguished fellow for the School of Education, and their third for the School for the Geospatial Research. The $50 million donation by Rick Singfield, where again, Robert Cardillo is the first fellow, the retired NGA CEO. Dennis Muhlenberg is the second fellow, the retired Boeing CEO, who's working on advanced manufacturing, and then Art McCoy is the third, working on training, workforce pathway development. I don't just want a pathway pipeline, I want a highway. And so we're putting together this workforce highway so that we can have more stars on that highway, and we can do it. My own life is a testimony to that. I mean, how could I retire at this age? It's because I started teaching at 18, and I've done 25 years, and I'm quote unquote free at 43 from the role, but not the goal. I'm retiring from the position, but not the mission. So I'm going to dedicate the rest of my working life towards really being authentic and really doing it in a way that's going to show those same kind of results for other young people.
Right.
Dr. McCoy, drawing right back to your education background, you made a reference to pre-K. There seems to be more controversy in recent years. There was a period in which it seemed like there was a consensus of the importance of early childhood education. There seems to be less of a consensus today, perhaps. I don't know really the source of it, but where do you come down on that? Is early childhood education at pre-K extremely important or overrated?
It's as important as the air we breathe. It really is that important. It's the best investment any business person or parent can make into the life of a child. Let me give it to you from a sociological perspective. The mother's education level is about the middle to the ceiling of a child's education level. And that's been researched and just written for like longer than we've all been alive, the mother. So if you insert education at age 3 or 4, you change that trajectory, especially if the parent had a high school diploma only or did not graduate from high school. You then insert this level of language acquisition and math and counting, which is critical reasoning, that then sets the trajectory of that child towards a path that would be middle class or above, a college level or above, because the teacher of preschool is college level above. It prevents incarceration. It stops the 30 million word gap of 5-year-olds and not having access of words, 30 million words that middle class students do. It sets the ACT scores higher. It prevents even ACEs, adverse childhood experiences of trauma, abuse, neglect. So yeah, the research is just enormous on the impact of the years of age 3 and 4. That's how I met the governor's wife. I partnered the Nurses for Newborn program and the Raising STL program from the city. I brought it to the county to make sure every pregnant mother had a nurse and a parent mentor from conception and birth of the child. and had them working with the parents and then giving them words, little sticky notes of cards, reading books to the child, even while they're in the stomach of the mother. That's all part of this. And then, of course, at age 3 and 4, early childhood, and then kindergarten at 5th grade. It's the best investment for the long run.
Dr. McCoy, with everything happening today at such warp speed, how do educators stay on top of potential career paths of the future? You know, this week with the Colonial Pipeline, there's been a real emphasis on the importance of cybersecurity jobs. How do you as an educator address the future when things are moving so quickly?
I have to say, that's why it's a need for us to create a leadership institute for the future of equity and engagement in education, in business, and in communities. As an educator myself, I did it by really reaching out and touching those businesses. I would raise $2 million of private funds from them to create a foundation, to use a foundation to then pay for internships. I helped Brian Cross and the Missouri Chamber of Commerce to establish the Show Me Careers program, which takes teachers and counselors every summer to do externships for 1 week at the businesses that's in their locale. We actually started that in Ferguson, Florissant, and Francis Howell in 2011 before the St. Louis Chamber, and through Deborah Patterson's work with Deborah Holmes, and then Deborah Patterson from Monsanto at that time, now Bayer. And so now it then got crystallized to that program. So what we want to do and what we are doing as the RBC is we're supporting the Show Me Careers work. We're supporting the work of Brian Cross. We're supporting those school districts who are doing teacher externships so they can go to the businesses in the summer, and that's their professional development. No more sitting in the classroom, no more sitting at home remote and doing a PD, a professional development on the screen. Go to the business, because that's what a carpenter told me. The best way to know whether you can do the job is to put you on the job and see if you do it or not. Don't read a textbook. The same is true for teachers and counselors to learn what's going on. And business is fast. It's moving at the speed of business. So people have pivoted that are being successful, and those that aren't, will not be here. So you have to go see the pivot and be a part of it. I've had students do externships in Future Ready labs every summer, but we're also paying teachers now to do externships at the businesses. That's one big part of this.
So Art, that list that you gave, and a lot of kids, they fulfill that list, and then others, they do what they need to do to put themselves in a situation to work in the trades. So they want to work in the trades, but meanwhile, down at the union hall, they're thinking something else altogether different. And then meanwhile, down at the corporate office, there's some attitudes that are completely different. Our best and our brightest get the heck out of here. I'm going to be honest with you. I would like to see my daughters leave and come back at some time. How do you combat that? Because that's a reality of St. Louis. And all the talk won't change the attitudes that hold people back. How do you fight that?
You're right. Real money is the quickest way. When I had real people, I got 50 of them right now that are going to be doing work with us. 30 that are upstairs from where I'm at right now that are celebrating getting, $20 an hour apprenticeships in a tech company with Cigna and the training from Darty Business Solutions. That's an IT accelerator happening right now. When those kids who are high school 18-year-olds and then last year's graduates, when they really show their friends that check and they walk in the room with a Gucci bag, the friend's like, did you steal that? No, I got a job that's paying me more than my mama makes. That's the fastest way. It's always been the word of mouth. And so the key to keeping our talent here is giving them access to incredible opportunities. People say this about education. Education is the great equalizer. Yeah, that's true. But access to powerful opportunities is an equity supersizer. You want to give them the opportunity and you want to showcase your stars so that these young people can say, I don't have to go to Chicago to have this happen for me. I can be right here and be paid, be well-educated, taken care of for 4 years, and have a commitment from a business. Their loyalty to me makes me more loyal to stay here and be loyal to you. And so that's our shortest method. In the long term, you should establish relationships. and that mentorship, that R for reconstructing what mentorship looks like, where you really have a white person and a black person really intergenerationally talk and say, you're going to take my job. So I want to give you everything I know to invest in you because I'm giving it to you. I don't want to keep it. You're going to be the next best journalist. You're going to be the next best banker or engineer and so forth. And that's what companies like Clayco have done. That's what companies like many of them are doing more. Even BJC that's committing their tuition reimbursement to following the kid through their nursing degree and more. And so that commitment will lead to people staying, in my opinion, more and us not losing our talent.
What is the most detrimental attitude that you hear from the kids that you've had to deal with? Is there, they're like, well, there is no success for me. There's no chance for me. I mean, what is it as an educator? You say, look at all these programs that we have, and they just think that's not for me. How do you combat what seems to be an seemingly already entering the system with somewhat of a defeated attitude that these opportunities are not here for me? How does that impact their ability to succeed?
I've been an educator in almost every level and almost every environment. I mean, I have been in every level from pre-K through college, teaching graduate school. So let me give you a multifaceted answer for your very intelligent audience. In urban or more so impoverished places, because it's rural and urban, the school is your savior. And that's where you have some destitute situations. In the affluent places, which I've taught in, the school is the slave to the desires of the rich. That your parent gives you a $20,000 check to your business, your school, and you close school that day so they can do what they want, go to their mentor, fly to this place and make it part of education. And then middle class is all about, as someone said earlier, I think it was either you, Joe, or Alvin, middle class is about the pathway to college. How can you be better than the previous generation? So the despondence in each student at the lower SES, the middle, and the higher sounds accordingly to the purpose of what education was for. At the lower SES, it's just to get the heck out of here. I'm on survival mode. We're all just trying to make it. A gunshot could have went past me. I almost died. I know 5 friends who did. I feel like I'm depressed already. I feel all alone in the world. I've been abused and neglected, ignored, and the world is not for me. So the goal is to get you out and up towards a pathway to take control of your life, not be a survivor, but a thriver. And that's what, giving kids that I can name $25 an hour in the trades while they're at 17 or 18, because in our school system, I gave 12th grade to industry and 11th grade to industry. What does that mean? The kids got they got IRCs, industry recognized credentials, and that's how they got promoted. So as a junior and a senior, you got IRCs. So those IRCs are carpentry, construction certifications in power tools, forklifting, so forth. In food,
Dr. McCoy,
yes,
we're going to have to leave it there and pick it up on that point next time. And we hope that next time comes real soon. Thank you very much for joining us on Next Up, and good luck with the Regional Business Council Workforce Development. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you all. Pleasure to be with you.
Dr. Art McCoy with us. Thanks, everybody. We'll check in with you next week at this time.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
There's a drive to deep right center. This may be gone. Brett way back there watching. Home run! Ed Williams.
Right-hander winds and fires. Yastrzemski lines a base hit into center field. He dares around second. He will score.
It might seem like ancient history.
He said, why don't you stand up? I said, I don't think I should have to stand up.
There was not a black face in sight anywhere.
But the stories of the civil rights movement still resonate for us all.
Segregation in the North was dynamic. It was real, ugly, violent.